It's midweek conference basketball in the Big Ten as the Iowa Hawkeyes are searching for a big-time win, but they got to travel down to Mackey Arena and take on the undefeated in Big Ten play, Purdue Boilermakers.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome into an episode of Locked On Boilermakers and Locked On Hawkeyes for this special Locked On College crossover. We're talking this big game that's coming up Wednesday night between the number 5 ranked Boilermakers and the Iowa Hawkeyes. So we'll get to all that today. My good friend Trent Condon is joining me today from Locked On Hawkeyes, and we're going to talk all about this matchup. So how are you doing today, Trent?
I'm doing well. Good to join you, Nick. And we've seen each other for some squad shows, but the first time that we've been able to match up is Iowa and Purdue. Didn't meet on the gridiron this season. So good to talk to you. One that Iowa comes in limping a little bit, some frustration in year number 1 of Ben McCollum for the first time, really starting to step up a little bit here, but ready for this one. And I guess we look at it as an opportunity, not a realistic maybe opportunity, but an opportunity for Iowa to would pull off, which would be a huge, huge victory for them in their program.
And we'll definitely get to all of that. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The college football playoff is here. Championship game coming up. And FanDuel is the best place to get in on the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boost every game day. But you brought it up, Trent. You talked about how there were some injury concerns for this Hawkeyes team right now. And there was a stretch to start out this year where you guys strung together, I think, 9 or 10 wins to start out this season. And then just lately, once we get into conference play, it has been a little bit tough with a loss to Minnesota. And then recently, you guys dropping one to Illinois on Sunday. What has this Hawkeye season been like for you guys so far? What has this ride been like? And where do you sit right now, January 13th, game on the 14th, and you say this Hawkeyes team is this? What is the story of this team so far going into this game?
You know, the tenor has changed here over the last week and what happened with the loss to Minnesota and then following up with the loss against Illinois, though both of those games were winnable. Iowa certainly had opportunities late. They weren't able to pull through, and that has kind of changed the tenor. First, we start kind of with the bigger overview, and that was the excitement. New coach coming in. Fran McCaffery had resurrected the program. He had got them back to respectability, got them back to kind of the level that they were under Dr. Tom Davis. Good enough to make the tournament most years, win a game in the NCAA tournament, but that was it. That was all you were going to get. And in fact, that's the reason that Dr. Tom Davis was not retained way back in the late 90s because of that reason, because they couldn't go to that next level. They brought in Steve Alford, who was not just an abject failure as the Iowa head coach, but he was also a terrible person on top of it. That didn't go well. Then it craters under Todd Licklider and went to historic lows that Iowa basketball had never seen before, certainly in the last 75 years. Fran McCaffery brought them back, but it got to that same level. Couldn't get the next step. Good enough to make the tournament, maybe win a game, and fan apathy had really set in. So you bring in Ben McCollum, a guy that grew up in the state of Iowa, grew up a Hawkeye fan. He knows all the old guys. He was like many of us, people in our 40s that grew up, Iowa basketball was the biggest thing. It's taking a while to reinvigorate the fan base, but there was excitement. Then when we kind of close it in a little bit further here, lost to Michigan State, really non-competitive in that game. They had Iowa State down, and you guys know certainly at Purdue how good that Iowa State team is. They had them down double figures, had an opportunity to win it late, couldn't finish. And then what happened last week with the back-to-back losses against Minnesota and Illinois? This is a good Iowa basketball team, but again, the heights that maybe at different times Iowa fans were dreaming about, finally getting to the second weekend of the NCAA tournament for the first time in quarter century. I think those are tempered a little bit. Probably a team that's going to make the tournament, but right now doesn't feel like there's a whole lot more for this season.
Right now for Purdue, it's a bit of the opposite. We got all the expectations possible for this year's squad. You've got the senior season for Braden Smith, Kaufman-Renn, Fletcher Lawyer, and then even bringing in the guy in the portal, Oscar Cluff, who is now a senior. So overall, just for the fans, it feels like one last ride with these guys you grow up with. You got the Zach Edey teams. You got the team that fell short in the national championship and the team that was eliminated in the first round by a 16 seed. So the journey has really kind of ended at this point where this year feels like the end game, so to speak, for what this Purdue squad is for the guys on this team. So there are a lot of expectations. And to start out Big Ten play after that Iowa State game, we've largely bounced back, started out 5-0 in Big Ten play, but some of these games have been close, and there have been times where Purdue lets their foot off the pedal against teams that they probably should beat, like a Penn State or like a Washington towards the end of games. So I understand why there may be a concern for some Purdue fans going into this game against Iowa, that they have proven to be dangerous despite losing some games in the past. But a lot of times when I hear people talk about this Iowa squad, and we'll definitely get into this in terms of the matchups, but it feels like people say this is a Bennett Stirtz rather one-man show, that they don't have the depth. Do you feel like that's a fair assessment, or is that discrediting the Hawkeyes team a little bit?
No, I think it's fair. And kind of as Bennett Stirtz is gone, this Iowa team is gone. And you go back and you look through the losses, and really outside of the game against Iowa State, Bennett Stirtz has not played very well. He has struggled in these matchups, and even in the Iowa State game, he was not elite. I mean, you go through the 4 losses, and it's been significant, the gap that we've seen between his play and what we've seen in basically every other game throughout the course of this season. And because of that, I think, yeah, that conversation and that narrative, it's real. You slow down Bennett Stirtz, you stop Bennett Stirtz, you're going to beat this Iowa basketball team. And that's been the next part, is what I was looking for. Some secondary scoring, some extra guys that can help out. It wasn't just Bennett Stirtz that came along from Drake with Ben McCollum. It was 5 other guys, and all those guys are nice role players. Tavian Banks was great against Illinois. Really athletic wing type of player, can beat you a couple of different ways, can knock down an open three-pointer, but a really athletic guy. Cam Manwa has been their big guy in the middle. He came from Drake. Isaiah Howard, a young guard that's got some skill to him, and certainly some good defense. Gil Combs, who also starts. But when you go through those guys, nobody's a guy that you anticipate more than maybe a time or two a year is even going to put up, like an 18-point performance. They're not that kind of skill set. Really, the hope was 2 guys coming into the year, 2 transfers that were going to be that secondary scoring punch. One we've seen at times, that is Alvaro Fulgaris. Fulgaris is a guy that came in from Robert Morris. They were the team a year ago that pushed Alabama in the first round of the NCAA tournament. He was good in that game, and he can see the skill set from him. Can shoot it from the outside, but it's been so inconsistent, and I would just can't afford that the way they're built. And the other one, one of the more confounding ones, is Brendan Hassan, one of the guys that has the most experience playing at a power conference level. Began his career at Villanova, played 2 years in the Big East, was at Kansas State a year ago, and he just hasn't played. Didn't play in the game against Illinois. He has missed 3 different games this season, not because of injury or anything like that, because of coach's decision. This is a guy a lot of people had penciled in as a starter. So those were guys that we thought was going to provide that scoring punch, and it hasn't been there. So the narrative's right. The narrative is very simply, slow down Bennett Stirtz, you're probably going to beat Iowa.
So that's the key for Purdue from a scoring perspective, how to limit this Hawkeyes team. But when you talk about the Boilermakers this year specifically, it's hard not to get lost on that offense. They rank number 1 in KenPom. The efficiency is just unreal, off the charts, with Braden Smith, who just broke the all-time Big Ten assist record. Right now, he's averaging out about 9.8 assists, right around that double-double. So he's been unreal this year for the Boilermakers, and with him, he's really led this Purdue offense to new heights this year, alongside those guys that we talked about. Fletcher Loyer shooting the ball a lot better right now. Kaufman-Renn and Oscar Cluff down low doing a lot of great things. So for Iowa, and this is an Iowa team that I do think is a little bit underrated on the defensive side. They have a top 20 defense in KenPom. Is there a way to stop this Purdue offense? Now, if they're on. I don't think anybody can necessarily stop them or beat them when they're at their best. But is there a way that Iowa is able to slow down Purdue a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, you start with the pace, and that's a big part. No, Purdue is not certainly a quick tempo team by any ways. That's going to be what Iowa's going to have to do, is grind this thing out, ugly it up, keep the scoring down, and keep the possessions down, more importantly. Iowa doesn't run very often. That's going to be a part of it, and that goes hand in hand with what they do defensively. One thing, though, with Iowa, and I think an opportunity here, obviously, you got to chase them off the three-point line, right? Iowa has, if they can keep that shooting percentage maybe under 30%, something like that, you got a shot in this game. But we've seen so many times here recently where it feels like at Mackey, Purdue is hitting 12, 15 threes against the Hawkeyes and just cruising to some victory. So chase them at that three-point line, do that. Another component that is interesting to take a look at is at the free throw line. And it's something that Ben McCollum has talked about a couple of different times going through the Big Ten rigors for the first time, is just understanding they're not getting good whistles. And is it working officials? Is it the way that you have to sell things? I mean, the throw your head back crap that basketball players have developed over the last decade drives me absolutely crazy. But that's something that I was figuring out. If they can, on the road, you're not going to probably shoot more free throws at Mackey than Purdue is. But as long as that gap isn't significant, where Purdue shoots 30 and you shoot 8, like, you're going to get blown out. That's something that at least they've been talking about. We'll see. Maybe Ben McCollum, he's going to come up with a game plan. He's going to say, you know what, for the first time, I'm really going to work these officials. I'm going to be Tom Izzo over there, hooting and hollering and hopping up and down. That's probably not going to happen, though.
Well, we're going to get into the players here in this next segment. We're going to talk who's the matchups and who has the advantage. So make sure you stick with us here next on this Locked On Crossover. But first, the college football playoff is here, and FanDuel is giving all customers even more ways to get in on the action every single game day of the playoffs. Because right now, every college football playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost waiting for them in the app. And I love using FanDuel because that profit boost, you can use it on bets you already feel good about, whether you think the underdog is going to pull an upset with some bigger odds, or if you just want the favorite because you think they control the matchup. You can absolutely pick what you want with our partners at FanDuel. Then you apply the profit boost and go after even bigger winnings. And when you win, they pay out instantly, which is perfect for playoff football. FanDuel is the best place to get in all the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boost every game day.
Welcome back here, a crossover edition, Locked On Hawkeyes and Locked On Boilermakers. Trent, Condon, Nick Arvin with you here on the Locked On Network, now #1 for sports podcasts. And if you haven't already, take a peek right now as we have an opportunity for you to join our Everydayer Club, an opportunity for you to join your podcast ad-free. You can go to the websites, Locked On Hawkeyes, Locked On Boilermakers, Sprupercast.com, easy for me to say, and you can join on that way with our Everydayer Club. All right, Nick, as we take a look at this matchup here, we got to start at the point guard spot. And though we talked a little bit about Bennett Stirtz, I heard Gary Parrish, a national guy, he was talking a little bit a week ago before Iowa's 2-game losing streak, that he has Bennett Stirtz as his All-American candidate first team over Braden Smith. And since then, Bennett Stirtz has not played well, and Braden Smith just continues to do Braden Smith things. I'm just continually, when I watch Purdue, just dumbfounded at this guy. Under-recruited, not big. How does he do it? I mean, year after year after year, the role players, the big-time players change around him, and yet Braden Smith in year #4 still playing at an elite level.
He's just added so many different levels to his game as he's evolved as a player. You look at it as a freshman, he was a guy that was able to score, he was able to pass, but he was by no means putting up the numbers or finding the success in terms of breaking these defenses down. But he was still a talented player as a freshman. Has started every game to this point for Purdue, which is just unheard of for a senior guard. But he's really embodied Purdue. He's been Mr. Purdue since he's been at the university, since he's been at West Lafayette. And he's carried this program into new heights. And going into this year, it was a bit of a conversation because he is on pace to be that all-time leading assist record holder if he's able to beat down Bobby Hurley. Right now, he's on pace to break it around the Big Ten tournament. But with that being said, I was a little bit intrigued to see, is it going to be a new evolution of Braden Smith this year where he really focuses on that playmaking, or will he still shoot the 3 ball? Will he still try to get to that mid-range fadeaway? And I don't feel like the answer is as easy as maybe I thought it would be, because yes, he's almost averaging 10 assists a game, which is crazy for Braden Smith. But also with that, he's putting up performances like 23 points and 16 assists like he had the other game, where you just look at that and say, is this an all-time performance from Braden Smith? Because these numbers are just flat out unreal. The way that he's been able to bring in his aggression in terms of trying to score the ball, I think that's opened up a lot for him in terms of being a playmaker, because the defense doesn't know what they can do. They try to collapse on Braden. Then he finds an open Boilermaker for a 3. So it's tough to guard Braden Smith. And really, he does a lot for this Purdue offense. That's why they're #1 right now in terms of that offensive efficiency. And I don't think there's a player better at the guard position right now in college basketball than Braden Smith.
The other component of this point guard matchup is Bennett Stirtz and kind of what they do on the defensive end of the floor. And I wonder what I was going to do defensively in this one because they play Bennett Stirtz so much, though that hasn't been the case as he's been battling foul trouble here these last few games. He's normally out there, though, and going back to last season, he played the most minutes in college basketball at Drake a season ago. But on the defensive end of the floor, a lot of times they'll play him off the ball, guarding a 2-point, a two guard, something like that. Maybe it's CJ Cox, maybe it's even Lawyer as they play with some different combinations and doing different things there. It'll be Cale Combs, I think, likely probably guarding Braden Smith, really good defensive player. They got also some long arm guys that they play off the bench and maybe could do some different things on that one. Is there any avenue, any kind of defensive, I guess, prototype that you look at and say, this has been the type of player that at minimum has been able to slow Smith down?
A physical guard. So what Purdue has struggled with is a lot of length in terms of it really muddies up those passing lanes where it's tougher for him to generate. And then also it's tougher for him to drive and get inside because a lot of what Braden does is driving inside, either forcing that mid-range or getting to that pass. And that's something that we've seen with lengthier defenders like in Iowa State where they have all those guards where they can just throw at you. That was the one that Braden did have some trouble with. But in terms of him breaking down defenses, everybody's kind of thrown everything at him so far. And he's done a great job of being able to break that down, kind of understanding throughout the course of the game how he needs to adapt to that in order to find success. But to your point, for Bennett Stirtz, who is going to guard Bennett Stirtz? You threw his name out there, but it's going to be CJ Cox. There's no doubt about it. He's our best point of attack defender out of our backcourt. And really what he's been good at. He hasn't been our leading scorer. He hasn't been that guy that you throw in and say, oh, he's going to score 20 points in this game. But what CJ has done a good job of doing this year is the ability to throw him on other teams' leading scores out of that backcourt, and he locks them down. He neutralizes that threat. And it really gives Purdue a lot of opportunity on defense to play through other guys, force other teams to go to guys they're not necessarily comfortable leading that offense. CJ's been great for that this year, and I think that he's the perfect piece to put alongside Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith, where, yes, they're not the best defenders in the world, but they can still get the job done.
I want to go inside also when we're talking about matchups here with you, Nick, and go inside. Cam Manwa only played 8 minutes for the Hawkeyes against Illinois on Sunday. As a whole, this team has been dealing with a lot of sickness, illness over the last week. That has been a big conversation. I don't like it as an excuse, certainly. The way they played and some of the things that they did bothers me. If you're out there, you're good enough to be on the floor, you need to still be following assignments, and that had been a problem here these last couple of games. But inside, Manwa sounds like he's going to be good to go inside. He's an undersized 5, though. And we know on the other side, because it's Purdue, that means they're going to have a couple of behemoths. You talked about Cluff a little bit earlier, the big size that he has coming in from South Dakota State. And also off the bench, Daniel Jacobson, of course, a 7'4" guy. Purdue, why wouldn't they have a 7'4" guy? Those big guys being big and effective, though, how they have played, and maybe from the Iowa perspective, a concern because this is not a big Iowa team.
Yeah, I do think it's concerning for Iowa in terms of teams that Purdue are going to play this year, teams that haven't really developed that strong front court. I think that Purdue is a really big disadvantage, or Purdue has a big advantage, rather, against those squads because what they do bring is, like you brought up, Oscar Cluff, who can just flat rebound the ball. In my opinion, one of the best offensive rebounders in the country, one of, if not the best rebounders that you could have picked up in that portal. And if you look back to last year where Jacobson, he was probably going to be that center alongside Kaufman-Renn. He breaks his leg 2 games into the year and you don't have him. He's forced to redshirt. And it feels like Purdue, when they make it to the Sweet 16, fall just short to Houston. And Matt Painter said it, that they're just one piece short in that front court. They bring in Cluff, and I thought it was the perfect decision because you have that rebounder now, and that really shores up a lot for Purdue in terms of what Kaufman-Renn gets out of that, because all the gravity that Cluff gets, Kaufman-Renn had last year, and now it gives him the opportunity to have more ability to score on offense because he's not having to do as much on the defensive side. That's what Cluff brings you, just flat out rebounds it. And TKR, he's seen a jump in his rebounds since Cluff has been here because of the gravity that Oscar does bring on the board. So that's a big factor. It's just Purdue's ability to dominate the glass with Kaufman-Renn and Oscar Cluff in that starting lineup. But something that a lot of people don't talk about and something that does kind of go under the radar in terms of Purdue's front court is Daniel Jacobson off the bench because he is an elite rim protector at 7'4". And what Oscar Cluff lacks in rim protection, Daniel Jacobson brings that. So the opportunity, the luxury that Purdue has to bring someone in like that off the bench when they need it, it's tough for a lot of teams to compete with Purdue's front court this year.
One final thing. I mean, we go through when we're kind of talking about these matchups. We talked about some of the important pieces for both of these squads. I go back to the last time we got to see the Boilermakers out. They gave up 85 to Penn State. I know Penn State played well the game before against Michigan. You saw that there. What Iowa State was able to do earlier this season. What does it take? Is it just as simple as, well, you shoot the ball well, you're going to score against this Purdue team? Or overall, is this maybe not your vintage elite level defensive team for Purdue, regardless of what the metrics say?
I think it's a little bit of both. So to start out the year, I would have definitely been on the side that this is not an elite defense for Purdue. Because just that offense, they blow them out of the water, and we saw some struggles with those physical defenses, the offenses that are really fast paced. We did see some struggle with that kind of archetype with certain teams to start out the year. But as the year has progressed, I think that Purdue's done a very good job, like we talked about earlier, at limiting other teams' number one scorers. And that's the way that they played, trying to make teams force them play through somebody else. We saw that with JT Toppin against Texas Tech, LeBaron Philon against Alabama. But against Penn State, it was a team where they didn't really have that number one option. Their leading scorer in Yates, he was out in that game. And they tried to play through Freddie Dylone. They tried to play through their big center, but they just didn't miss. So I don't really know. That Penn State game, it was just a really weird scenario where I didn't think Purdue necessarily played bad. But to answer your question, I don't think that this is a Purdue defense that is unbeatable. If you shoot the three ball, they're very capable of getting beat on any given night. Now, Purdue's offense, that's another story. But on the defensive side, if you can shoot the ball, well, that's maybe a little bit concerning for this defense.
Nick Arvin, Trent Condon with you. It's a crossover edition as we count down to tip off with the Hawkeyes and the Boilermakers. We continue our final thoughts and our predictions for this Big Ten matchup. That's next as we continue on a crossover edition of Locked On Hawkeyes and Locked On Boilermakers.
We're back here on this Locked On crossover, finishing up with our final predictions, final thoughts, and everything you need to know before Wednesday night's matchup between the Hawkeyes and the Boilermakers. So, Trent, we've talked all about matchups. We've talked about the storylines between both of these teams, but I want to ask you before we get into our predictions, what is one thing that Iowa needs to do? No doubt about it, Iowa has to do this if they want any chance at upsetting Purdue.
I think it's keep them below 10 3-pointers in the game, keep them in the single digits. Mentioned the shooting percentage under 30%. I think that's a number one. It's probably the 45 years of watching Purdue at Mackey against Iowa feel like they're just reining in three after three after three and how quickly that can go. So if I had to point to one thing, it would be that. Yeah, Purdue could still beat them a different way. It's not that that's the only path to victory, but what I'm looking for, the most realistic path, that's what it is. Keep them down 6, 7 3-pointers, something like that. Keep them under 30%. If that happens, I think Iowa can dig deep. And another component didn't bring up, Iowa, they've been down a lot in a lot of these games. They had a couple of comeback victories. This team won't quit. You've seen some Fran McCaffrey teams here recently quit. Purdue gets up 12 and suddenly it's 20 because their tails are between their legs. One thing I have to give credit to this Iowa team, there isn't quitting. They're going to fight to the end, even if Purdue's got control. How about you on the other side? What's it going to take? Obviously, Purdue a big favorite. In fact, our friends at FanDuel do have the line out for this one. Boilermakers favored by 9.5. What is a number one top of the scouting report from Nick Arvin?
Yeah, it's going to be limiting Bennett Stirtz. And I let out with this question because I really did feel like this was going to be big in this game. But you said it yourself. As Bennett Stirtz goes, this Hawkeyes team does go. So for Purdue, put CJ Cox on Bennett Stirtz and let him rock. He's our best defender on guards. If you're able to limit Bennett Stirtz, I think that Purdue has a really good chance to just limit this Hawkeyes offense. If they're able to do that, I do think that Purdue is going to be able to outscore Iowa, especially at home. And that's going to be a big factor because as much as Purdue, they have been iffy at Mackey. That hasn't been as much of an advantage lately because the students have been gone against Penn State and against Washington. That's a big factor at Mackey Arena, the way it's set up with the small capacity. But the students are back. against Iowa. I think that's going to be a factor. I think that Mackey is going to be rocking. So if you limit Bennett Stirtz, if you don't give Iowa any chance to get that momentum, to ride that hot hand, I do think that you're in a good spot. And I think that you can rely on your seniors, your veteran leadership, and overall just your experience to ride this game out against Iowa and get out to a 6th straight Big Ten win. It's going to be a fun one for Purdue. And I think we're about to get to our predictions in just a couple seconds. But before we do, who do you think is going to be the key player outside of a Braden Smith or a Bennett Stirtz? Because that's a big matchup here. Who do you think is going to be that under the radar, I guess, X factor? I know that's cliche, but who's going to be that X factor, so to speak, for Iowa in this one?
You know, if I was going to have a chance to say win in the final, you know, we get to the under 8 timeout. And, hey, Iowa was in striking distance. How did this happen? I point to Alvaro Fulgaris. Talked about him a little bit earlier. It's been inconsistent, but when it's there, it's elite. Go back to their win against UCLA at home, hit 3 3-pointers in the first half. He can mix it up. He had 8 rebounds against Illinois. It's just putting it all together and maybe being locked in for a full 40 minutes for Alvaro Fulgaris. He'll come off the bench. You'll see him. He's the Spaniard coming in there. But I think if I was going to have a chance to hang around in this game, Fulgaris is going to be the key.
For me, it's probably going to have to be Daniel Jacobson. Once again, I just think that he's so valuable off the bench. His ability to block shots, that's going to be big. Forcing Iowa to shoot those shots that they may be uncomfortable with. Forcing them into tough mid-range shots because it's tough to get inside on Daniel Jacobson. That long arm length that just... He can block anything. He can slam it down. Daniel Jacobson is going to be my under-the-radar guy for this game. But with that being said, we've talked matchups. We've talked storylines. We've talked final thoughts, who we think's the X factor. Now it's just time for us to give our predictions. So, Trent, I'm going to lead with you. What is your prediction for this game? If you want to give score, you can absolutely do that. If you just want to pick who wins and how, that's up to you.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a game that we're going to see Purdue certainly is the better team. I think we will see that play out throughout the course of this one. I mentioned I was not going to quit. They're probably going to get down in this game. And just from what we've seen out of this team this last week, I have real concerns that they can go in, not just beat an opponent like Purdue, but also do it on the road. You mentioned the students being back. That's another factor. They didn't exactly handle the iZone very well when they were in that one, though they did play pretty well at Hilton. That aside, I think this is going to be a component where Iowa, they're going to hang around at times. Maybe you're going to feel they'll cut it to 6 at one point there in the second half. Say, yeah, they got to run, just not enough firepower. And that, in the end, is the difference. I got the Boilermakers winning it 74-62.
And for me, this is a game where I do think Iowa can hang around in the first half. That's definitely a possibility if they shoot the ball well enough. We have seen that Purdue has struggled in the first half to pull away at times. So this is a game where I do think Iowa may stick around there in the first half. But I hope, and I just truly do hope that Purdue has gotten it to a point where they can put that foot on the pedal come the second half and start to get away, because some of these games lately have just been a little bit too close for me compared to who we're playing. And not trying to discredit Iowa, but I do think that Purdue is the better team as of right now. I think that they should show that they're the better team over a course of 2 halves. And with that being said, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that they do just that against Iowa. They pull it out in the second half, get it to about 12 points with a near cover over Iowa. It's going to be 82 to about 70, in my opinion. I've got Purdue pulling out a victory. Going to be hard fought, but one that Purdue does deserves to win after 40 minutes in. But thank you, Trent. I appreciate you joining me for another Locked On crossover. It was our first one, but hopefully first of many. I know that we play you guys down the road.
Absolutely. We'll do it again here in just a few weeks.
Yeah, and then I always end out the show saying boiler up, hammer down, but I want to be inclusive to whoever's on the Locked On crossover. So I'll let you throw in whatever the Hawkeyes fans say.
It's just to go Hawks. That's all we need. Go Hawks. Get it done. Pull the upset, and let's get rid of this grossness that we're feeling to Iowa basketball this week.
Fair enough. Simple enough. But for me, as always, boiler up, hammer down.